On today's show, the Florida Panthers had their end of season media availabilities. We're going to discuss some of the players who dealt with some injuries, and we're also going to discuss how certain players grew as players on the ice and themselves off the ice.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, June 16th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And you can listen to Locked On Panthers anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And subscribe to the YouTube channel because we're about 20 plus away from 500. So help the show out, and you'll get exclusive content, and you'll also get to see me and my guests' pretty faces here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. And shout out to everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Cats fans, the Florida Panthers had their end of season media availabilities today. Unfortunately, we are not preparing for a game 6 on Friday night at FLA Live Arena. And I also got to witness the ice getting destroyed as they were ready to move on into the offseason because, of course, keeping the ice over the summer, there's operation costs when it comes to the arena. So over the summer, they're saving a big buck. The city of Sunrise and Broward County in the arena. But it is a Fairbanks Friday here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, where Nick Fairbanks is back, formerly of PantherParkway.com, to discuss the end of season media availabilities for the Florida Panthers. We're going to do 3 today and 3 over the weekend. Today we're going to do Matthew Tkachuk, Anton Lundell, and Aaron Ekblad. But Nick, welcome back to Locked On Panthers.
Thanks for having me back on, Armando. And it feels a little chilly around here, something that I haven't been able to feel over the last couple of months. But I think that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, as what Nick is talking about, for those of you who aren't watching on the YouTube, Nick has his full playoff beard off. I only have the mustache still going. Stuart Skinner inspired me, especially seeing how thick that was during All-Star Week. I'm like, let me give this a try. I might change my mind later, but yeah. So what a crazy day for myself. Full disclosure, woke up at 4 a.m. to drive all the way to Sunrise, Florida, for media availabilities. Did all that, recorded the ice being destroyed. Went to Las Spadas, got this Eastern Conference Champions T-shirt at Caneswear today. And then went back home, took a nap, did some notes, and then here we are doing a podcast here. So great to be able to do content with you, my friend. But let's go right into it. Let me ask you, first of all, give us like 30 to 60 seconds on your thoughts on the Florida Panthers losing in 5 games against the Vegas Golden Knights.
Really couldn't ask for much more out of this team, considering what they were dealing with, number one, and number two, they just didn't have the depth this year. And that's something that we kind of talked about earlier in the season, that the depth between the seasons was a little bit different. And now that we're going into the offseason, I do expect Bill Zito to address that. I do expect us to come back better. But I can honestly say that this was a ride for a lifetime. I wasn't paying attention to the Panthers in 96. I wasn't a fan back then, but I can only imagine what it felt like back in 96 that it feels like today. So I'm grateful for it. I'm not angry or any kind of like sad about how things ended up, because none of us expected to be here. It was all house mounting after Boston, and I'm just grateful to be a part of it. Come on here and talk to you about the series, multiple series, and just enjoy it the whole time.
No doubt, and we're still kind of somewhat wrapping up the season in mid-June, and couldn't ask for anything more as we are delaying off-season content. But like we said, the 6 people went up to the podium today to do end of season media availabilities. We're going to spend in segment 1 talking about the guy who was not on the ice for Game 5, Matthew Tkachuk. And Matthew Tkachuk spoke about how he knew that something was off, and the order of operations of getting X-rays had to go through a concussion protocol from the spotter. Didn't know whether he was on his playing his last game, and also was talking about running on adrenaline and not really feeling it until the next day. Brady Tkachuk staying over as well, and just really, your heart goes out to him about playing with a broken sternum in all of Game 4, and even not playing a good amount of time there for like 10 plus minutes, and only getting there towards the last few minutes to try to tie the game. And of course, his teammates helping him dress, putting on his skates, brother getting out of bed as well. And there's no confirmation on surgery, but he also said that there were 12 guys who were more effective than him on the ice based on the broken sternum. What were your thoughts when you first heard of those things by Matthew Tkachuk in the end of season media availability?
Nothing but guts. This guy has the fact that he was still willing to lay it on the line, and that he just figured that he couldn't go. His body was basically telling him, no, this pain is too much. Game 3 was definitely all adrenaline, and the fact that he still went back out there and scored the game-tying goal says a lot about him. I don't think Florida's had a player like him ever, and I know I've said this multiple times during the season, but it encapsulates everything that he's about. So to hear that the team was helping him get dressed, put his skates on, his brother had to help him get out of bed. I mean, what more does he need to know? Like, hey, maybe I should take a break, or maybe I shouldn't play because I could injure myself even more. Because, I mean, one more hit to the chest, I mean, that could have been devastating. So just happy that he's now kind of going to be in that whole recovery mode. Hopefully he'll be ready for the start of the season, and he'll be ready for a much better season next season. I don't know how he can top it, but hopefully he can lead the Panthers in many different ways as well.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I did not get the opportunity to ask him if it was a Paul Maurice decision to take him out for the last 10 minutes, or if it was, or even not have him play Game 5, or if he said that he couldn't go. But you gotta really appreciate how he lays it all on the line for just to win the ultimate prize, and something that you work all season for as well. And he also was asked about what were some of the greatest memories, and he spoke about how it was the memories created off camera as well, the things that we don't see, the fans and the media, and also talk about how the playing cards on the plane, or going back to team hotels, being around each other as well. And also, let's not forget that after Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final, what did he do? He thanked the medical staff, the strength and conditioning staff as well, for helping the Panthers go to help them power through Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final. And he did one thing today that I was not expecting him to do. He thanked the media at the end for a great year, and not really something that I would expect for him to do. It's just like, okay, we're just here doing our jobs. He's doing his obligations as a player, but also doing something so small like thanking us, and it continues to just show the kind of volumes that he is as a person at just 24 years old. I'm older than the kid, so it just goes to show the volumes that and the leadership qualities that Matthew Tkachuk does in fact have.
Definitely. And it is odd that you would thank the media, because usually they're the ones that are asking either uncomfortable or questions that you really don't want to answer, because you don't want to put anybody on the spot. You don't want to throw anybody under the bus. But I think his first year in Florida, he was such a magnetic personality that I think everybody wanted to go towards him. And I know the season didn't start off the way that they wanted to, and then even towards the middle, it wasn't where they wanted to be. But they always had that belief, and it carried with him, it carried within the team, and it carried with them in the playoffs. So, I don't think the media ever, was hard on him. I can only imagine what he probably went through in Calgary while the team wasn't either playing well, or, a lot of fans said that he didn't show up in their playoff run. Sorry. I mean, it's a different time. He's a different player. He's matured. And I think he just wanted to basically say, I really enjoyed this season and you guys were a part of it. Thank you for getting my message and our team's message out to really carry us through, the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and before we transition over to segment number 2, ever since I heard the word broken sternum, there's an old sideshow in the Amanda Show called Moody's Point. Did you ever watch that by any chance?
Of course I did.
Remember the character named Sternum?
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of me wanted a question asked, how did he play through the broken sternum? And then him to respond with, how did I not play with the broken sternum? So part of me,
childhood.
Yep, childhood memories there, but yeah, Matthew Tkachuk is probably too young to remember that show as far as that. But aging ourselves a little bit here on the show. But in all seriousness, we hope that Matthew Tkachuk does recover and he's able to get there back for the start of training camp. But we're gonna go to segment number 2, where we're gonna talk about Nick's boy Anton Lundell and what he had to say to the media in his end of season media availability. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about bird dogs. And bird dog stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird dog shorts do the exact same thing like Lululemon, but fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of a stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dog fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khakis, but stretches to get you way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dogs uses anti-stink, sweat-wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnHL and enter promo code LockedOnHL to get a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you. Segment number 2 here on this Friday, June 16th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. It is another edition of Fairbanks Friday here on the show. Nick Fairbanks is back, and we're going to talk about his boy, Anton Lundell. If you've been listening for a long time for here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, ever since January of 2021, all of the appearances of Nick, especially towards the end of the season, you could hear Nick just wanting Anton Lundell to come to the team after spending his time in Helsinki, and of course, the guy that he wanted drafted at number 12 overall back in 2020. Sorry, but Nick, Anton Lundell, he came to his media availability wearing an Inter Miami hat too. To the media availability, he said that he had it for over a year, so not something new for him. And we'll talk about a little bit more Inter Miami tomorrow, when talking about in relation to Alexander Barkov. But Paul Maurice said that Anton Lundell would be a big beneficiary of his development, and Anton Lundell spoke about most fun, more fun every round, and it got tough and it created some good memories. And let's talk about the importance of when you're still developing, and not only your not only your play, but your physique, your mental game. Whenever you're in year 2, and you are when one thing that players coming into the league want is consistency, and of course the situation that came with the coaching staff change as well. That's a little hard for a player, and we were a little tough on Anton Lundell early in the season, but of course how he's elevated his game, especially in round 2 and on. But how would you say that he's improved this season? How do you feel that he himself how he spoke about his improvement in his game?
So if you were to ask me, probably in December or January, I would probably say he was probably one of the more disappointing players. Not just because it was a sophomore slump, but I didn't feel like his defensive game was right. I think he was either trying to do too much or he just didn't have the right combination of line mates. Either way, he needed a run like this. He needed a long playoff run just to basically be able to put things into perspective, to put him in the best position possible, because he's always going to put defense first, just like Barkov. But the one thing that he has that unfortunately Barkov doesn't have is I feel like he has a more of a killer instinct. He's willing to shoot the puck. He's willing to create more offense. Whereas Barkov is more passive. He'll decide to carry the puck in the zone, which is great. He's very good at possessing, but he's more or less looking for somebody else to pass the puck to and, give them the glory for a goal. But Lundell, Luostarinen, and Reinhart really stepped up in that round two. I mean, I think they had the most beautiful goal, in my opinion, from a system standpoint, in that I think it was game two. Maybe it was game one, where Luostarinen goes in, hits a Leafs defenseman. Reinhardt's there to pick up the broken puck or the loose puck, and he passes right to Lundell. And I don't think Samsonov knew it was there. So he's
Just
grown.
game two.
And yeah, thank you.
Where they scored, I believe, within 47 seconds of the game. So
Okay, good.
Of the second period, excuse me.
Okay, so I think he needed this to not only show that he has the ability to still do this, but also that he can shine when it's needed. Now, did he show up in the third round? I do. I do think that line was there. And then against Vegas, I think actually he was actually one of the better players. He definitely showed out in the first game and third game. But I think he just needed this confidence boost. And going into next year, I think he's going to be even more confident. We'll see who his line mates are. We'll see if Reinhart is still around, depending on, what his contract status is going to be. And then, Luostarinen, I hope he gets better after his broken tibia, because I saw him skating the other day, and it looked like he was not ever going to come back this season. And I'm just glad that, they were serious enough not to allow him back. But Lundell is going to be a force to be reckoned with. I didn't think it was going to be that way midway through this season, but now I think he's got the tools to do it again.
Yeah, and it's great. It's crazy what he can have mentally. He could feel good going into the offseason, and the fact that it's short for him, and he's not one of the guys listed who had any serious injuries. I think it's going to be very beneficial for him for sure. As far as the curb for him. But I did have an opportunity to ask Anton Lundell on Thursday about how the confidence of the coaching staff for him, but also Alexander Barkov. We're gonna play that clip right now. Piggybacking on what they said, you have been called upon to play top line minutes throughout the regular season, but of course a different stage with the Stanley Cup final. How much trust do you think you've gained not only from the coaching staff, but your captain in Alexander Barkov?
Yeah, I think Barky starts to like me now. Maybe he didn't like me as much when I was living with him, but now I think he likes me. But no, I really enjoy playing with him, being around him. He's sneaky, funny Finnish guy, so we have a lot of fun. But overall, it's the most fun is to play together. So I know we're both centers, but I got the opportunity to play with him in the finals, which was very great, and I just tried to enjoy the game of hockey and go out there, have fun, even if it was the finals,
He likes him now again, I guess.
Yeah, I don't. That could mean anything. Was Lundell a little messy? Did he not clean up after himself? Because I mean, I've had. I was in my early 20s once, living in a college dorm with like 4 roommates. Sometimes those aren't the cleanest of places, so that could mean that could mean anything. But also Anton Lundell, he says that Barkov is funny, but don't count Anton Lundell out on his ability to make jokes as well. So just had to get that in there as far as his ability to like make the room laugh. And also when I shared it on Twitter, a lot of people loved that comment from Anton Lundell. But also Lundy was asked about playing different positions and his ability to see the ice differently as well, being able to go up on Barkov's wing as well. And I think that's just very beneficial whenever you're able to see it from one side, and then when you do go back to center. I don't think he's ready to be the 2C next year. I still think it's going to be another year. It's funny, we spoke about this last offseason about it, but I do think that this is only going to get him that leg up when he does eventually become the 2C.
Yeah, I was thinking about it the other day. I kind of had him penned in to go take over the second C position, and it wasn't the right time. He was going into his second season, sophomore slump, wasn't playing that well, didn't have a lot of the confidence, and then, the playoffs come around and he's playing a lot better. I think, as you were saying, that it benefits him playing on Barkov's wing to see the game differently, and it allows him to have more experience and to put his line mates in a better position after playing in a finals game like that. So it's all positive, but the thought I was having was maybe he's not going to be the answer at 2C. Maybe they permanently move him to wing. Maybe he's going to be the answer for Barkov, depending on what moves are going to be made this offseason. Or, him and Bennett can do the 2C, 2AC, or 2BC or whatever, just because Sam plays such a rough and tough game that I don't know how long his body's going to be able to take that, because ever since he came in game 2 in the first round, he was a force to be reckoned with, and it just seemed like his body took a beating, game in and game out. So I wonder if Lundell's then going to step in for him when he's injured or when he's just not there, that night, or he's not doing that great, which would be good exposure for Lundy. But at the same time, we got to see what we're going to get out of Lundell, if he's going to continue to be a center or if he's going to be moved to wing, which either way, whatever's going to make him more effective and make the team more successful, I'm okay with. So hashtag Lundell fan club over here. So we're all good.
Yeah, and you spoke about Bennett, and it was Paul Maurice did speak about Bennett had groin and oblique troubles before the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we know what happened in the Detroit game in late March that caused them to miss a little bit of time before the 4-game losing streak before the Florida Panthers did in fact make that run. So the grittiness of Sam Bennett, that is a guy who you might want to keep for there at the 2C, and who knows, like you said, it could be interchangeable for them too, as far as break glass in case of emergency. That's kind of how I see it. Correct. As far as that for sure. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3. We're going to discuss Aaron Ekblad's media availability ahead of the guys going out for the summer. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about Game Time. And buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you could stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun you'll have. And the Marlins are 8 games over 500, and they are about to come back from a long road trip, so you can snag your tickets over at Game Time. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals for tickets for football, basketball, baseball, hockey, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantees you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets for the same section row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps, and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to go through your email. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL and get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Segment number 3 here on this Friday, June 16th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. It is another edition of Fairbanks Friday where Nick Fairbanks is back on the show. And Ekblad spoke to the media on Thursday. And if there's any player outside of Matthew Tkachuk who wears their heart on their sleeve, like I said, outside of Tkachuk, it's probably Ekblad. And now it's starting to make a whole bunch of sense about the frustration that he went through this season injury-wise. And we could see how it kind of manifested on the ice, especially when he took a penalty as well. And it's just, I saw it as a lot of it boiling over, at least looking back at everything and now seeing it revealed about the broken foot, the dislocated shoulder as well. And just you kind of feel bad for the guy. And he said that this was the hardest season that he's dealt injury wise. And I had someone reply to a tweet saying he snapped his leg twice in the last 2 seasons. And he says this. Here's what I have to say to that.
Mm-hmm.
When it's really about the accumulation of different types of injuries and still having to go through the gauntlet of the playoffs as well. That's what I have to say to that. And of course, Ekblad talking about how it hurt worse when he wasn't playing hockey and his adrenaline wasn't going and just having to casually walk as well. And also the timeline of it as well is happened in game 2 against Boston. Didn't find out until in between the Carolina and Toronto series. And listen, you've dealt with your injuries playing with sports. I have too. Sometimes we could be in denial about how hurt we actually are because we just want to play for the love of the game as well. And I can't fault Ekblad for that. Everyone's like, why isn't he? Why? People are probably thinking, why isn't he? Why doesn't he just get it checked? Listen, there's just a different competitive fire when it comes to these athletes and wanting to just get out there and of course go for that ultimate prize of the cup.
Definitely, it does answer a lot of questions or speculations about him, during the postseason, even during the season that, he was dealing with a lot. I have an injury right now that I'm kind of dealing with that has me sidelined, but, not to the magnitude that he's had it, and as you said, you had somebody comment saying that he snapped his leg, twice in 2 seasons. Think about it this way. That's one and done. You're ripping the Band-Aid off. You're done. Okay. Mm-hmm. You can start recovering from that. You're not playing, you're going through and you're rehabbing. But this one is you're accumulating, as you said, injuries. You're having to play through them for not only a chance at the cup, but also for your team. And, it's getting multiple punches and still being able to get up and play. And that's probably a testament to him as a person and him as a player, even though I've probably been very hard on him this season, and my avatar on Twitter is Brooks Koepka with the traffic cone. But he showed a lot of guts. And honestly, if he had not said, or Paul Maurice had not said he was injured, I would have never known. He literally did not look like it. I mean, besides his skating, which it still is an opportunity for him, he looked like Ekblad. So it begs the question, has he always been hurt? Has he always played like this hurt?
Maybe.
And if it is, they got to find something out. They got to either find a new training regimen for him so his body can react or heal quicker, or at least doesn't get as damaged. But, hats off to him. I'm very happy to say that, he was able to go through this and put the Panthers, in a position to possibly win a cup.
Yeah, and especially since he's one of 2 guys who have been here for 5+ seasons and went through the GM change as well. And we know how much this means to someone like him as well. And he says that he is going to have surgery on the shoulder and he won't be ready for the start of training camp. Nothing about the start of the season, game 1 of the regular season, but he won't be ready for the start of training camp. And he did talk about how Instagram does in fact suck because we see a whole bunch of Vegas Golden Knights celebrating as well. So that it's a little tough. And he spoke about how the guys went back, drank beers, played poker. When it comes to being around the Las Vegas scene after losing in the Stanley Cup final, but also the unity that they were able to come together as well. So a little bit of insight about what they did after Game 5 of the Stanley Cup final. But I also had an opportunity to ask Aaron Ekblad about the transition this season and, of course, the various amount of injuries. Here's the clip on that. This was a year of transition, of course, with Mackenzie Weegar being traded to Calgary, of course, new coach, and, of course, your fair share of injuries. How would you say did you learn anything about yourself as far as a leader in the locker room and also you yourself off the ice?
Yeah, I mean, every year you learn things and you learn, how far you can push your body and I mean, just what we could do as a team. It's kind of just what I learned. I mean, didn't really do anything differently in terms of, leadership or, who I am as a person. It's just kind of always the same, daily, consistent. But no, I mean, just learn that we can do it.
And there's a reason why I phrased the question that way as far as him personally off the ice, because, of course, everything that he's gone through with having a different person on his D pair as well. And like we mentioned earlier, the snapping of the leg twice in consecutive seasons. And I'm not going to pretend like I know him personally. I'm not going to. But you just hope that he has a good quality of life in the off season, regardless of all of this. And it's going to be a long road back. Don't know what's going to happen as far as him getting a D partner and maybe Gus Forsling going to the second pair. But it's going to be a really, really tough, really tough off season for a lot of people involved. And he's expected to be one of the guys in the locker room to say something when the team needs to be checked, not physically checked on the ice, but checked emotionally. And and over the years, Aaron Ekblad hasn't been really revealing as far as like his feelings to the media, but we can only imagine how much more people have probably listened to him as he's been here for such a long time.
Yeah, he wanted to come to Florida on his draft day. You watch the draft videos and the behind the scenes, and he was mic'd up. And I remember Dale taking his time, to say his name and where he, played. And you just see him there, like, moving his feet. He's like, "Come on, Dale, just do it." And, that's the player you want on this team, somebody who actually wants to be here, wants to have success with this franchise. And, as you said, he's had a bunch of injuries. Who knows what that's done to him, mentally and how he goes about his game. That one season, 2016, where they had that 12-game winning streak, and he took that hit in Edmonton. I think that changed his career a little bit. I don't think he was quite the same player after that. He was trying to shield himself. He wasn't trying to play more of the physical game. But as he got older and was allowed to actually play more of a defensive style of game, not saying he's all the way there, but he's kind of started to trust himself. He started to trust his body a little bit more. I mean, he's made a couple of phenomenal plays during this postseason where he's able to break up either a breakaway or 2-on-1s just by being able to reach around another player and knock the puck away. So I just hope that mentally he's going to be okay, that he's going to be able to get over this, because shoulders are no joke. Ask Alexander Barkov in his draft year. They didn't know if he was going to be ready to start the season. And, I almost wonder if he's ever had an issue since then with that same shoulder. So those things never go away.
Yeah, and the moment he talked about which shoulder it was, his right shoulder, I was trying to do the shooting motion, and I'm like, yeah, I feel it here when trying to do the shooting motion. Hey, and he even brought it to a 2-1 deficit in Game 5, even though I didn't think the Panthers were coming back. I was like, okay, there's something. So
come on, you had to have a little bit of faith there. Like, if we get the first one in the second period, it's on, and then we saw what happened.
But it was just a no expectations approach there, honestly, in Game 5. But also, Aaron Ekblad is one of a few players who stay in the region during the offseason as well. So that's another thing that's going to really help his healing of his body during the offseason as well. So that's a plus definitely for him. So thankfully he's going to likely see team doctors go through some physical therapy as well, provided by the team more than likely, and he's going to be well on his way back. But like we said, not for the start of training camp, more than likely.
Mm-hmm.
But Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this Fairbanks Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. I want to thank you as always for joining me, as this is day one of our off-season content here on the show. Before we sign off, tell everybody where they can follow you online.
Armando, thank you again for having me on all season, all postseason. It's this year was a roller coaster to say the least, but I think we ended at the top without the prize. And as the season went, I wouldn't have it any other way. So thank you again. And if you guys are listening, following, watching, you guys can follow me at Prudentious0 on Twitter. So thank you again, Armando.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much. And I'll see you next week, my friend.
See you next week.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for everydayers, make sure you come back sometime around this weekend or maybe Monday, where we're going to discuss part 2 of the end of season media availabilities for the Florida Panthers. So I'm Armando Velez with Nick Fairbanks, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.